with me on that? But not only does it fit, Stu, but it's like, it's the stuff, It's like,
The bomb.
it's what we are, Because we are you. Okay. All right, so in this session, we are going to speak with our instructor corps. Aren't they wonderful? Someone just watched the PBS special on Mary Tyler Moore. Okay, you're like some of you are too young for that reference. Is this another one of those God, I feel old, like
Yes.
Vice President? Okay, all right. Here we have it. So we're going to talk with our incredibly wonderful instructor corps about how they stay current. And I want to remind you all that when David and I were writing the very first grant back in 2008 or 2009, we were scratching our heads and wondering where we were going to find instructors. Where were the fertile fields, And I said to David, hey Dave, there are a lot of really incredibly talented people right here in Illinois, but yes, Ann, we'll never find everyone we need. And we haven't. I mean, we do have to go out sometimes and recruit people, but my point to you is that these folks are here in Illinois. They are part of your cohort now. They are part of your family, part of your community. They are people whom you can ask, and they are people who, everybody knows something different. So find your own instructor corps. Find your own orbit of people to whom you can go and say, you are wonderful with X or Y or Z. I need you to be part of my life, part of my professional existence, and here's how. So, they're wonderful, they're fabulous, I love these guys, but they're not in a different world than you are. They're from right here in Illinois, with the exception of Dave and Beck. But they're from right here in Illinois, so you two can make your own makey instructor corps. All right.
Preferably not with alligator clips, though.
No. Extra alligator clips.
Yeah.
Does this not work?
We couldn't get it to work.
All right.
I think Gwen has gone to find someone.
It's working?
It's the podium
It's
one
the
that's
podium
working.
mic that picks it up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. You think it's working.
All right, everybody. So let us open the discussion, my friends, with what is the one most important thing that you can point to for staying current with what's going on in your field, your job, your life? What is your jolt of electricity that you get? Brian wants to start.
My number one piece of advice is, well, first of all, I'm very lazy by nature, and so find other people who keep up on stuff and follow them on Twitter. If they have a blog, follow their blog. So find those people who are actually doing the hard work of finding out what's going on and keeping up. And as long as you're keeping up with what they're talking about, you're going to catch the most important stuff, and with the least amount of work on your part.
Yeah. I second that, Twitter. I'm going to read off the big ones in terms of technology that I follow and I love, because they'll blast post things. So you'll see like 4 posts in a row from them, and you'll get on. So TechCrunch, Wired. Gotta go up a little bit.
Mashable, do you use them?
Yeah.
Mashables, not
Yeah.
Mashables.
Arduino, Makershed, Make, Thingiverse has got a Twitter feed. Brian Pickman, if any of you know Brian Pickman,
He was Colonel.
he was here.
We all know.
Make it at your library.
So,
Robot Test Kitchen, they were from the I Leave cohort from last.
Andrew, you wanted to say something?
Okay. I'm going to tell you how to, first, I'm going to tell you how to remember Ford's vice president, okay? It's Nelson Rockefeller, and the reason you'll remember it for the rest of eternity is he died in flagrante with his mistress.
Oh, yes. All right.
Okay.
In office?
Yes.
We got that on tape, right?
Yes.
All right, very good.
Okay.
A couple more, Gadget Global. I'm gonna keep naming them off. CNET, Mashable, Lifehacker, Ars Technica.
Very good. You are. What I was going to say is, it was really brought home to me when I went to Open House Chicago, and I toured, I'm sorry, it's a little diversion, but I toured Decorator Supply Company, which had been in business since 1892. And they make plaster medallions. So decorative plaster medallions. They've been doing it since 1892. They were formed for the Columbian Exposition. Fine. I was talking to a person there, and I said, how many people do you employ? And he said, 10 years ago we employed 40. This year, right now, we're employing 10. And he said, I'm very much afraid when 3D printing comes, we're going to employ 1 or 2. And so it struck me then, as it rarely has, how, Trump and so forth talks about we're going to bring jobs back from Canada and Mexico. Most of the jobs that are gone because of technology. And I think one of the most, and I know this is not technology, but as librarians, I would urge you to pay attention to the news, to get a good news feed and to understand what's going on. Because things change so rapidly, and for instance, a contract to Saudi Arabia might well affect a company in your town or a sub-supplier in your town, and you need to be flexible enough to remember to be able to do it. And one last thing, I use Reddit a lot. There's thousands of channels on Reddit, so that's it.
One of the things that if I had to distill to my go-to one resource is this podcast called On Being. The person who does it, her name is Krista Tippett, and they have a weekly newsletter. They have a Twitter feed, and then the podcast. I don't know how regularly they do episodes, but they're on NPR and that kind of thing. And I just find it to be, it's like kind of a conversation about crossover. It's very like spirituality and science at the same time, and it's just a nice agnostic view of kind of human wholeness and community, that kind of thing.
And for heaven's sakes, don't be afraid to explore.
Okay.
Okay, I'm sorry. So, shut up, Andrew.
2 comments. I mean, I find Twitter is actually my #1 way of finding out about new movements and reports in library science as well as technology. In school libraries, Buffy Hamilton is always pointing out interesting things. Even Stephen Abram is pointing out the man just sits and reads and reposts, and so it's a quick way of looking at it. However, I used to sort of unabashedly point people and say, you must be on Twitter, go on Twitter. Twitter can be a nasty place.
Yes.
If you'll excuse my language for a moment, if you haven't been called a motherfucker on Twitter, you just haven't said anything. I mean, it can be real, and as a male, I get the least of it. So what I now say is, I believe that Twitter is a great information source. I in no way feel that you have to participate in that conversation. You can be passive and watch, because there are really brilliant librarians who get rape threats. Thank you. Just in time for rape threats, which is disgusting. And I hope as a field we can do something about making it a more civil discourse, particularly talking to our fellow librarians. So that's my warning. Get on Twitter, follow people, watch them a lot. If you don't feel comfortable engaging the discussion, it's okay to lurk. So find another place, another venue. Facebook tends to be a little bit more civil because you create a different environment. Local, regional groups, creating, reading groups and such. These are great places where you can be in a more civil environment and have that kind of conversation as well. So.
And if you do decide to participate and post things on Twitter, the comedian Craig Ferguson, one of his stand-up specials that's I think it's on Netflix now, but he had a bit where he said that, okay, if you're going to be posting on Twitter or Facebook, remember to ask yourself 3 questions. Does this need to be said? Does this need to be said by me? Does this need to be said by me now? And he said it took him 3 marriages to figure that out.
Karen or Rachel? Oh, sorry. Just want to be sure everyone.
Sure. I would like to recommend making sure that you join part of a healthy listserv. I found that healthy listservs where there's a lot of activity give you an opportunity to see what other people have sifted through and found to be their gems. I like the Islama one. Ryan and I are both active on that. And oftentimes the stuff comes, the problem with a listserv, right, is it shows up in your inbox and so you're not always ready for it, and sometimes a listserv can be too healthy. So what I've found is that if I just create a folder in my email that says miscellaneous interest, anything that I think would be remotely interesting, I file in there, and then I save that to when I have some lulls during the year, or on a Thursday I can't get motivated or I need some creativity, I just go into that folder and I start having to look around. And that's led me to discover some things that otherwise I may not have.
And Gina or let's see, Alice?
I echo a lot of the things up here. A couple of things that I find useful in serving our patrons is to read outside of librarianship, obviously. That you're going to spot a lot of the trends by just reading general publications first than you will by the time.
Like what?
Like adult coloring pages. Okay, the librarians are all talking about that. They've been talking about that in, mainstream non-library stuff for quite a while. I'm glad that we've adopted them, or whatever. And one of the things that I have a hard time doing is making sure that you're reading what's being published in your community, because more often than not, that's where you're going to get the best knowledge of what's happening locally. It's great to know these broad trends and things like that, but if you don't know what happened at the school district last week, and you're finding it out as people are coming in and telling you, you need to be prepared for those type of things as well.
I just want to reiterate what's been said by David, especially about Twitter. I do a lot of lurking on Twitter. I have an account, but I very rarely put anything out there. And when I do, it's like a retweet of something. And a lot of it, as I look back, I've only probably got about a dozen tweets. But they seem to be all kind of library sort of things now that I look at them. But beside that, I just wanted to say that I actually subscribe to Mashable, Ars Technica, and Wired. Wired is one of my favorites. I've been a big fan of Wired ever since it was only in paper many years ago. And in fact, this morning on my Twitter feed, I saw that Wired has the essential weapons that you're going to need for the coming zombie apocalypse. So I'm anxious to read that. Just saying.
Alice, when you say you subscribe, do you mean on
Well, I mean
Twitter?
on Twitter.
Okay.
On Twitter.
Okay.
Yeah. I go to the website too. I follow them. Yeah.
I just didn't know if you meant
But I,
magazine.
yeah.
And Karen, did you want to?
Sure. Ditto about Twitter. I don't use it that much personally, but because I have to post on Twitter for my library, I've made it kind of a daily tradition that one of the first posts in the morning is something related to productivity, creativity, work-life balance, things that are going to help my community get their workday off to a good start, but those things also help me digging around for those and finding those. At least Monday through Friday I try to do that. And the other thing, getting into non-library things. I'm very proud to be a librarian, and I always, when people ask me what I do, I say I'm a librarian, but I'm a library marketing and public relations person is really what I am. So following a lot of traditional library things or going to library conferences isn't terribly helpful to me in my daily work. So I have found that going to conferences or reading publications that are more marketing focused has been super helpful to me. We have a local marketing, library marketing network group that used to be NSLS, is now the Rails marketing group. Those people are fantastic, and they are generally not librarians. So I'm learning a lot from them, and I get a lot of great ideas, and we bounce a lot of things off of each other. So those are just some other options.
Yeah. Last one is sort of old school these days, are RSS feeds from blogs, but Mashable, Wired, all of these folks you can get through. If you haven't discovered it, Feedly, Feedly, it replaced Google's aggregating service for RSS feeds. Great interface, works well on, poor Google. Works well on phones, works well on laptops, works well everywhere, is synchronized between multiple devices. So.
And don't forget talking to people. I have an 18-year-old and a 21-year-old. Just talking to them about what's going on in their spheres of life. I mean, my 21-year-old, he's such a clothes horse. He loves, he always wants to dress in the latest. The other one doesn't care. But he is buying these shorts called Chubbies. Have you heard of this? Okay, well, let me just say, $50 for a pair of cotton shorts. I'm like, what? But it's the thing they're wearing. The reason I'm bringing it up is that when you buy a pair of Chubbies shorts, there's a whole it's ridiculous. But there's a whole marketing community package that goes along, which is it's $50 probably, but there's this whole package that goes along with owning a freaking pair of shorts. And this is now what he's expecting out of when he buys something. And it's kind of an interesting thing to just sit back and watch. So I would say don't forget about people emerging into the marketplace. And somebody else had a comment.
Oh, I learned about Snapchat from my nieces.
And I know several of the teams, your projects involve websites, and my job is, I'm a librarian who builds websites. A couple web-related resources, a couple online magazines. There's one called A List Apart.
Right.
The other ALA. And then there's also one Smashing Magazine, which is also full of ideas and talking about new stuff and what's coming up.
What's that one called?
Smashing Magazine and A List Apart.
I just want to say that when I originally joined Twitter, I was on Facebook a lot sooner, and I made a conscientious decision that my Twitter feed would be professional. My Facebook feed is more personal,
Right.
more family, more friends, but my Twitter feed and what I tweet out is definitely professional. I don't get political. I try to stay as unbiased as I can. I do have biases. We all have biases. But you'll find more of my bias coming through my Facebook page than my Twitter feed. So I've made the conscientious decision, especially with the Twitter flame wars and things that come up. I don't want any part of that junk. So library, professional is my Twitter, and personal is Facebook.
I started toning down my tweets when Ann followed me.
Some good career advice there.
I have that chilling effect.
That's when I started ramping mine up.
I'll have to a group of my staff and they stop talking. Anyway, okay.
This kind of relates to the session that I did yesterday where we talked about members of staff, middle management, and considering their needs. I found it was very helpful for me as a school librarian when I started subscribing to things that my my principals were getting and my superintendent was getting, and that may not apply to all of you in all of your situations, but you are likely working with individuals who do not have your area of expertise and see your area very differently than you do. And so it's been very helpful for me to read articles written from those other points of view, and they don't necessarily know that I'm reading those things, but that helps me when I go in to speak with them about something, because I know what point they're starting from, because it's so easy for us in our profession to overlook that. So that may be with community groups. And then I also have found I enjoy shelf awareness, if you're familiar with shelf awareness, because it helps me get a view of book selling on the other industry. I mean, libraries are so much more than that, but that is an area that I'm pretty ignorant in, that a lot of the people that I serve have regular interaction in. And so that's been helpful for me as well.
Okay, last comment.
I just want to say one of the most beautiful sites for learning really cutting edge web design, stuff that it's so new that it doesn't work in all browsers kind of stuff, and the future, is a site called Codrops, Codrops. And the stuff in there is just beautiful.
I want to be sure to give all of you an opportunity to ask our instructors, as a group of instructors, whatever you want to ask. You know, what was it? Is there something that you really loved, you wished you would see but you didn't? Anything like that that you'd like to ask them, and how they found out about what they taught you about, or anything you want to ask them. I wanted to be sure we left some time for that.
Some of the talk this morning during the fail topic was about library referendums, and our library, Jason and I work at, is working towards one next year for November of 2016, and we have some pretty big plans and big hopes for our district. Is there anything that you can tell us now that might give us an even better chance of winning the first time around?
Every library.
I'm going to give this to Tony.
Before the specific, there's a great, I love Every Library. It's a super PAC that was created by someone who left ALA and has an advisory panel of librarians, and they are all about grassroots political efforts and getting referendums passed. So at a sort of general level, they're a great resource.
Target. Go to, I think is your district both in Cook and Kane counties? Just Kane, you're lucky. Cook County records are a scrambled mess. Go to Kane County, you can get the voting records, and you can get the results of previous referenda that were run in your district. Look at where previous referenda passed or were successful, like what precincts, and target those for outreach campaigns. And then also look at the voter registration list. And anything that you mail out, you're going to look, it's going to be a presidential election. You want to target the voters that come out and vote in the presidential elections. And stick with those. Don't try to hit every household in your district, because not every household comes out to vote. But definitely you can look at those records and say, okay, these people come out to vote during presidential elections, and then you can send your targeted pieces to them.
Brian has something he wants to say.
I used to work for and am currently on the board of a public library that had 6 or 7 failed referendums before giving up and just sucking money away to do the expansion. Something to be aware of is that, you know, you can't rely on people voting being a rational thing. Like, so in campaign materials, doing all sorts of trying to do logical stuff that you know, your library saves you this amount of money because blah blah, that's probably not going to work. And you know, something that I've heard and I believe is true is that people do not vote for you because they like you. They will vote for you because they think you like them. So if you can get that message, and I mean, it's more of an emotional than a rational approach.
Karen, did you?
Well, ours failed, so I don't think we can really ask us.
Failed miserably.
Yeah, right, yeah. I can't help.
Gina.
I guess everybody shared about the different things that they follow and read, but my question here is there's so much of information, there's so much of stuff. It's, I guess, like it's time management or in terms of focus. And I know, at least in my sessions here, from Beck, what I've seen is that, you know, she's sort of simplifies it, or you know, so how do you manage when there's so much of information? How do you stay focused? How do you manage your time? And so that it's not like all over the place. So that's, I guess that's my question.
I would recommend,
David, you want to
sure, thank you. A quick strategy, which is to have a personal narrative. Sounds odd. It sounds very Beckian. That's now an adjective.
Beckian.
Which is, it's not necessarily, well, this is my domain and all I care about. But it's talking about how an impact that you want to see, a project that you have. And the example I give is that if anyone asks you, so what are you doing in the library? The answer should never be all the same. You know, what are you thinking about? Stuff. It should always be, oh, let me tell you about this cool idea. Even, you know, it can be a dream, it can be little, it can be big, but it shows that you have an interest, it shows that you have activity. And what it also helps is, as you're getting bombarded with all this information, it helps you begin to prioritize what you pay attention to and don't pay attention to. Then what I highly recommend is all that Twitter stuff that we talked about is really a human network. And the biggest strategy that I want everyone to adopt is to have their crazy ideas list. The crazy ideas list, of which Ann is on my crazy ideas list, which is every time when I have a crazy idea, I call up and I say, hey, Ann, I got a crazy idea. And luckily, to this point, it hasn't been, yes, Dave, that is a crazy idea. More often than not, it's, oh, how about this? And let's think about this. And you build this network. Oh, and have you heard and have you talked to? And so by having this narrative and idea, rather than simply saying, I love all librarianship and information, but having this thing about, I'm really interested in maker spaces and their impact in libraries. I'm really interested in youth services. And it doesn't have to be very specific, but by constantly having something that you can invite people into, then you build networks, they share information, you can prioritize it, and it can turn into real projects and resources. So my general answer is, don't try and keep up with it all. Try and push ahead an agenda that you have, invite lots of people into it, and they will help sort and shift the information of who and what you need to pay attention to.
Beck has a comment.
I'd just like to mention three maybe methodologies that I use as far as productivity. The first is probably the oldest. It's called Inbox Zero. You can Google it and find more about it, but basically I process my inbox as regularly as possible to zero, and I just make myself answer the hard ones. The second is something that I've been using for, so I've been doing Inbox Zero since 2006. The second one I've been doing for about 4 years, and it's called the Pomodoro technique. And you can Google that as well. Pomodoro is Italian word for tomato, and it got started because the guy who created the technique had a kitchen timer that was a tomato, so that's why. But it's basically setting a timer for 25 minutes. And it's more complicated than that, but the beauty of this system is it helps you estimate, which is something that I think everybody can use more information about. But the beauty of the system is that I might have something on my list that feels really intimidating, and I can't say yes to doing it, and so I procrastinate. And what the Pomodoro technique allows me to do is to say yes to working on that thing for 25 minutes. And it just changes the whole thing for me. And I can, you know, I might not be able to write this grant. I don't know what to do, but I can write this grant for 25 minutes. So that's been critically helpful for me, and I really recommend it. And then the third is the one I've been using the least amount of time, and I've been using it since March. And it's called the Bullet Journal. BulletJournal.com is the website for it. And it's a technique written by a guy who had a lot of trouble with time management, and he worked on it for many, many years, and it's just where he arrived. And I found it to be great because it allows you to reflect on what you've been doing over time, which is something that's hard to make time for. So those are the three that I use religiously.
I think you should show them your bullet journal.
Alice said I should show you my bullet journal. I mean, you probably won't be able to see it. I'm not going to pass this around, but you know, it's basically it's an analog type thing, and every day starts with a dot, and then you X the dot if you do it. You do a little forward arrow if you're going to move it forward in time. You do a back arrow if you're going to move it way forward in time, and you cross it out if you decided not to do it. And so what's really cool is as I look over October, when November comes, I can look at all the things that are still dots and know what else I have to do because I didn't get it done really quickly.
I recently read a book, which I referenced in the session, and for everybody, in case this is something that might appeal to you, it's called Essentialism, the Disciplined Pursuit of Less. And one of the items that stuck with me from that book was the idea that 20% of your work efforts produce 80% of results. And so what I like to do is take stock of what I'm doing and determine what will yield the largest results and prioritize those. It's not that I won't do the other things, but it's that for my end users, these few items will produce the largest amount of results, and that helps me with my time management, because as a school librarian over 5 different buildings, with a staff to manage and grants to write and collection development for those 5 libraries, sometimes there can seem to be so much that I don't even, like some days I get in my office and I'm like, oh, where do I, what do I start with? How do I? And by taking that mentality and applying it to everything that I have to do, it really helps me sort everything out that way.
If Brian and I were given the same task to do, we would do it in probably 2 totally different ways, but it would look the same at the end. And that's because, for me, I've taken the time to explore the different tools, and I've decided what I like and what works well for me and what doesn't. So I've taken personal time, I've taken time during my life, during my workday, to understand what these tools are, and that make the analysis or analogy to what you're doing. But I look at the tools, I decide what works, I decide how I like it, if it works with what I'm doing before, and just kind of be conscious of the other stuff, but don't worry about them. Go with your strengths too.
It's okay to say no to things. That's been one thing I've really had to teach myself over the last few years.
It's hard, isn't it?
When I got my evaluation this year, my boss wrote on there, Karen, just reading the list of what you did this year has exhausted me. But I have that kind of job, and we're only a 2-woman department. So I can't really just go, well, I'm not going to do something today. But then in the rest of my life, I've had to give myself permission to just say, you know what, no, I don't. Thank you for inviting me to your party. Thank you for inviting me to your baby shower. I'm just not going to come. I'm going to send a lovely gift, but I need my Saturday afternoon that weekend to feel like a human being again. A coworker said to me a couple of months ago, have you had a vacation since you started working here? And I hadn't. And I just booked one. And I'm excited about that. And part of my vacation is going to a monastery in California where I went one other time, and there's no internet there, there's no phone. Nothing will work because you're up high on a mountain over the ocean, and it sounds like kind of, but it's like amazing. You just come out of there and you're like, hey, I'm a person. I've stopped going on Facebook on Saturdays because that's my family caregiving day most of the time, and I want to be really present to the people who are right in front of my face. Not always going, hold on a second, I'm just gonna look at this thing. Wait, let me show you this picture. Why? So you really have to make an effort though, and you make a decision and just say, I'm gonna try this. You don't have to stick with it. Maybe you do it for 6 months and go, oh, that's not working. But find ways to say no to the extraneous stuff. You'll feel so much better.
Other questions for our instructors? Anything you're wondering? Something you'd like to take back with you that you've seen them model? How about that? I'll give you a minute to think about that, okay? I know there's a lot here. And I'll, Alice. Okay, I could have said that better, probably. This is good, yeah. I'd like to go back to this group and just ask you, what's the best thing you've learned off each other?
There's a stereotype of a professor as someone who lives in an ivory tower looking down. And what many people don't realize is that often that stereotype, when true, is they're in an ivory tower of their own construction. It's very easy for me to live in Syracuse, and it's very easy for me to close a door, and then I have to teach on Thursday nights, and then to go back into my door. And there's always a very valid, legitimate reason for not engaging other people. I have to get this article written. I have to write this. I have to give a presentation. I gotta get on a plane. And so, and while I may seem like an extrovert, the truth is, I have to kick myself to open that door sometime and go out and meet people. And the thing that this has shown me over and over again is the impetus to get up is that whenever I come here and whenever I engage with these folks, even on phone calls and on email and certainly in person, and very much everyone in this room, I learned so much. And the thing the one big takeaway is there has never been an idea that I have had that has not improved when shared.
Yep.
And that, it takes me, because you want to hold it and it's your baby and you want to take a while, but when I come here and we start talking about and seeing the curriculum idea and a course idea and a project idea, and let me grab your brain to look at this idea, it's gotten better. And so the short answer is there's always a reason not to engage other folks, and what I've learned is just the great reward of building a network around you and forcing yourself to re-engage the network and make sure it stays current.
I think for me, I would say, coming from a performing arts background, when I get in a room like this, I can get very shticky. I can get very like, hey, waka waka. And I always remember our very first I Lead You instructor meeting. We were all meeting each other for the first time in many cases. And we all, the big personalities just came out. We were all one-upping each other with jokes and sarcasm and how cool we thought we were. And, and I'm really glad that it's gotten away from that, and we're much more, we're just okay being our real selves in front of each other. I think we've learned a lot of that from Beck, coming from a non-library background, just bring your stuff with you wherever you go. You don't have to always have the perfect routine in front of everybody, and I think that it's made us better instructors, because in front of you we look more like normal human beings now. So I would just say that. I appreciate the diversity of our personalities, the diversity of where we come from in the library world, our communities. I've just, again, learned so much from all these different people.
I'm going to pass for the moment.
Has anybody come up with anything?
Keep asking.
Keep asking.
Let's finish answering.
Okay.
Is you have a question, or did you have a reaction?
Oh, I had a question for what Tony just said.
What Tony just said?
Tony said that, do we have a question? So I had a question.
Wow, that is meta right there.
Is your question about the question?
No,
Okay.
please keep going.
My head's exploding.
I'm sorry, Beck.
No.
But we do have
I was going to respond to the, well, first of all, I love to learn, and so an opportunity like this, I feel like a sponge, and it's just awesome to be here. It's been awesome all 3 times, even when it was tough and difficult and stressful and you were tired and all of that. I think at the end of the day, the value that I've gotten out of this is so incredible. But the question was, what do we want to model? And I thank the instructors for spending time with me, and I think I've spent time with all of you throughout the past 3 weeks, but I have to say, I wish, or like what I would like to model is Rachel. I have just been blown away by your calmness, professionalism, and the perfect comment. Like, your advice is just, I don't know, it's just really been great. And so I'm not calm, and I'm kind of spastic, and I want that like professional calmness that I think you bring, and so.
Actually, the thing that I was going to say was that I wasn't sure that I wanted to address it because I feel like sometimes it's something that's unspoken. I'm a younger librarian, and so sometimes I feel intimidated. And the first time that I was selected for the instructor corps, I thought, I feel like maybe this is a bad idea. Like I'm not quite sure. And what I found was, as someone who wants to be a leader in the profession and as someone who wants to contribute professionally, that there is, by and large, within librarians, a wonderful mentorship that takes place. I could have very easily, and have at different points in my career, I would say, experienced some ageism there, and that's not something that I've experienced here, and that's a wonderful, beautiful gift. And so something I would say that I've learned from the instructor corps is not to be afraid to reach out to individuals who are more seasoned than you are, and expect that you will be embraced and pulled up and made to step your game up, because that's certainly been my experience. And so I've been looking to kind of establish some of those relationships with others that maybe I would have been intimidated to before. And so that's one of the biggest things I'll take away from being an instructor at
Can I have it back?
Too late, Brian.
I resumed control. And I'm not trying to, say I've gotten nothing from the other instructors, but I think, the biggest thing I've taken away from the experience being an instructor here was basically what I've learned from the iLeaders and the team members, because and the funny thing is, that I'm the third person here who you've heard today say, despite the appearances, I'm very introverted, and that is true, and it takes an effort, and I've tried to make an effort to sit down with folks on the buses and the tables and have conversations, and when learned about you can use PowerPoint to make a flyer, to make flyers for your library. That was just an amazing thing to come. So and high kicks
alone right there.
So I really like hearing your perspectives on the sessions that I've taught, and questions that have come up during those sessions, and conversations with you talking about your project and what you're trying to do with it and what's going on at your libraries. So I mean, I've gotten an awful lot out of this experience from all you folks.
And in 45 minutes, we've talked about what they do to stay current. Oh, go ahead.
One of the reasons I signed up for iLead is for the continuing education opportunity, being able to develop myself professionally and learn new skills. I'm a young librarian too, and I feel like I still have a lot to learn. And after this, I would like to know other continuing education kind of opportunities. And I know there are webinars, I know there are different things like that, but do you guys have any recommendations for those types of things?
Have you seen any of the Laconia stuff up in our area?
Yeah.
Excuse me. Those are really great local opportunities. They're usually very low cost, $15 or $20 to attend. Yeah. Kind of miniature versions of this, but good workshops, and you can choose a section or many sections that fit your work or your interests. It doesn't have to relate to what you're doing right now, but and in my case, I just recently joined the board of one of those sections now. So now I get to be on kind of both ends of the experience, both learning from the presenters in the workshops that we bring in, but also planning for them, which is giving me a whole different set of skills. I'm very interested in library programming, but I've only done a small piece of it. So it's like a 2-for-1 deal for me, where I'm learning on both sides of it. So I would definitely check out Laconia. They've got a website. Yeah. You can get on mailing lists and things like that.
Okay.
railslibraries.info/CE.
Okay.
That's become super amazing in the last, I would say, 6 months. I mean, just the number of things that you've even archived that I've been able to pass on to my staff is amazing. So I'm so glad you guys have jumped that up a lot.
I will tell Joe.
No, yes, don't tell Joe.
Don't tell Joe. Oh, it'll go to Joe's head. I won't tell Joe.
If you have an opportunity, we all know of ALA annual, ILA annual, PLA, Computers and Libraries. If you have a chance to get there. It's in Washington. It's always in Washington, D.C.
Or Internet Librarian, which is
Yeah,
its
which
West
is-
Coast
yeah.
counterpart in
Oh,
Monterey,
okay.
California. Highly recommend.
Internet Librarian is in October.
Now.
Computers and Libraries is in April. Computers and Libraries is always in Washington.
It's March next year.
Oh, it's March?
It's in March next year.
Oh, they moved it. But I've gotten some great ideas. I've gotten some great takeaways from that. Library Box. If anybody's familiar with Library Box, it's an offshoot of Pirate Box. I found out about that at Computers and Libraries.
Something that I've been doing is having workovers. So I will, it's like sleepover, but during the day with your colleagues. And so I invite people who are just very diverse in terms of skill set for me, and just work around a big table together. And imagine if you worked at a library, it would be quite opportune to be able to just invite folks to where you are. And it's just to get exposure to how others work, what they're thinking on. Generally, if you commit 4 hours of co-working time together, you'll have these lulls where conversations emerge, and you just learn so much from others. So it's a little bit of a lighter weight kind of professional development, but I think access to the ways others work and think.
If you're Rails members, Rails is a partner in something called the Expect More Collaboratory. It's based on a book I did called Expect More. We're revising it, and then we're turning it into a series of workshops and continuing education, primarily to bring your communities up to speed with the kinds of things you've been doing here. So we're trying to provide tools, materials, and training for boards and volunteers and community outreach, and working with folks like Catherine Dice at ACRL now, and working with others around. And so the hope is, if you're not Rails members, just email me, and I'm sure we can work a way that you guys can also, because what I'm hoping to do is not just broadcast those out, but help you guys get out the good message about what you've done. So if you just look up expectmorelibrary.com, you'll get more information on it, and I'm really hoping it's a place that we can showcase the work you're doing, as well as provide you with the tools that you're going to do. And the state library was part of it, and we will figure out a way for them to make part of it again. I had an idea. So, but that's one.
Any parting comments? That have to be it.
I just wanted to say that for code practitioners, for nuts and bolts working in code, Code for Lib, CODE, the number 4, LIB, and there's a journal, it's an online journal.
Well, please join me in thanking our fabulous group. Okay, we are taking a 15-minute break.